She smirked, "Stop controlling me," right before leaving for a late night with another man. Her hand was already on the doorknob when she said it, keys clutched between her fingers like tiny brass claws. The hallway light behind her turned her hair into a rough halo, but there was nothing holy about the way she was looking at me. Chin tilted, lips curved in that half-amused, half-exasperated way I used to find cute when we were bickering about dishes or whose turn it was to do laundry. This time it made my stomach clench. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her leather jacket, and I didn't even need to see the screen to know who it was. I could almost feel the other guy's presence in the space between us, like a draft from an open window. "I'm not controlling you," I heard myself say. My voice came out thinner than I'd hoped, stretched tight over something hot and ugly in my chest. "I'm asking where you're going at 11:30 at night, when you have work at 8 and you won't even tell me who you're meeting. That's not control, Mia, that's concern, right, because you care." She cut in, making air quotes with the hand that wasn't on the door. The keys jingled. My cat, Maple, flicked her tail under the coffee table, sensing the tension like animals always do. "Luke, I'm not your kid. I'm not your intern. I don't owe you a location share every time I leave the apartment." Another buzz from her jacket. She shifted her weight, glanced down, then back up at me. The living room lamp cast a soft pool of light over the rumpled blanket on the couch, the 2 mugs of half-finished tea, the life we had built into this small space. I realized, with a weird detached clarity, that if she walked out, those things would still be here. The mugs, the blanket, the plants she always forgot to water. The only thing leaving would be her, and whatever illusion I'd been clinging to about us being okay. It was a Thursday night, which somehow made everything feel more petty and more devastating at the same time. Not a dramatic Saturday blowout, not some movie-style revelation on New Year's Eve. Just an ordinary weeknight where I'd heated up leftover pasta, queued up a show for us on Netflix, and watched her sit at the table, pushing food around her plate while her phone lit up every 30 seconds. We've been together for just over 3 years, living together for 1.5 of those, and I'm still trying to figure out where exactly normal relationship concern ended and controlling allegedly began, because according to her, at some point I crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I'm 30M, she's 28F, let's call her Mia, because even now typing her real name makes my fingers hesitate. I guess I'm writing this because I don't trust my own perspective anymore. She keeps telling me I'm controlling, manipulative, that I'm weaponizing my anxiety to keep her small. Part of me is terrified she's right. Another part of me sees her smirking, saying, "Stop controlling me," as she walks out to meet another guy at midnight and thinks, "Hang on, this doesn't feel like I'm the only one messing up here." We met in the most cliché way possible, at a friend's birthday party, the kind where half the guests are clustered around a beer pong table like it's a sacred ritual, and the other half are in the kitchen having deep conversations over cheap wine. I was in the kitchen group. I remember noticing her laugh first, loud, unapologetic, the kind that turned heads. She was standing on a chair trying to reach a bottle of tequila from the top of the fridge, swearing at Sam, our mutual friend disaster host, for putting it so high. "You know what else is high?" I said without thinking, already wincing at my own impending bad joke. "Your risk of falling and suing him for negligence." She looked down at me, eyes big and dark, and grinned. "Are you flirting with me or offering legal advice?" "Why not both?" I said. "I'm a multi-purpose guy." She laughed so hard she almost did fall, then let me take the bottle down for her. We ended up in a corner, shouting over the music, sharing stories about worst dates and worst jobs. She told me she worked in events, which made sense because she had that social orbit energy, constantly being pulled into different conversations. I told her I was a project manager in tech, which in her words meant I sent stern emails about deadlines while wearing comfy hoodies. I liked that she didn't seem intimidated by my anxiety. I've had it since I was a kid, the kind that makes you triple-check the stove and rehearse conversations in your head before you have them. When I mentioned it casually, expecting the usual awkward sympathy, she just nodded and said, "Oh, I get it. My brain's a bit extra too. I call it my inner chihuahua." Inner chihuahua. "Yeah, you know, constantly trembling, barking at shadows, convinced every noise is a break-in," she said. "You learn to pick it up and go, SHH, we're fine, dude." I think I fell a little in love with her that night, watching her gesture wildly as she talked, rings flashing on her fingers, eyeliner slightly smudged from hours of laughter. She was chaos in a floral dress. I was order in a plain t-shirt. It felt like balance. Our early days were the kind of montage you see in rom-coms. Late-night drives, shared headphones on trains, inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else. She dragged me to rooftop bars and live gigs. I taught her how to make decent scrambled eggs and convinced her that sometimes staying in with a movie was as valid as going out. She'd text me, "You alive?" if I went quiet for a few hours and show up at my door with coffee, just in case. When I had a panic attack on a crowded tram one afternoon, she practically bulldozed us off at the next stop, sat me on a bench, and breathed with me until my heartbeat slowed. "You're okay," she said, squeezing my hand. "We're okay, no monsters here." So when she moved into my apartment, it felt like the natural next step. Having her toothbrush next to mine, her clothes in my wardrobe, her weird herbal tea collection taking over half the pantry, it all felt like evidence that somehow, finally, I'd done something right. Living together, though, has a way of revealing the fine print you didn't notice when you were just dating. Mia came with a social calendar that looked like a spreadsheet. Work drinks on Wednesdays, book club on alternate Mondays, trivia on Tuesdays, birthday stuff, there were always birthdays, just going for one drink with old friends that often turned into stumbles. Through the door at 2 a.m. I'm not saying I never went out. I did. I like people, I like my friends. But my ideal Friday night is a small group, a board game, maybe 2 beers, then home. Hers was dancing till close, after party at someone's house, watching the sunrise from a stranger's balcony. At first I went along with it more than I wanted to, leaning into the idea of being spontaneous. Part of me was flattered she wanted to show me off, introduce me as her boyfriend to everyone she knew. Another part started quietly counting the nights we were both actually home together. We started having small arguments about it, maybe 4 months into living together. "You didn't tell me you were going out tonight," I said once when she walked in from work, already changing into a slinky black top instead of her usual office clothes. She shrugged, mascara wand in her hand. "It came up last minute. Ellie's having a rough time, she wants to go out, girls' night." "Okay, but can you at least let me know before I've cooked for both of us?" I gestured at the 2 plates on the counter. "This is the 3rd time this month I've found out about your plans like 5 minutes before you leave." She sighed, setting the mascara down with more force than necessary. "I shouldn't have to run my social life past you, Luke. I'm telling you now. Why is that not enough?" "Because it feels like an afterthought," I said. "Like I'm the roommate you inform out of courtesy, not the partner you plan with." "Wow," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "You realize this is how it starts, right? First tell me when you're going out. Next thing you're making me share my location. Then you're mad if there are guys there, then I'm not allowed to go at all unless you're with me. I've seen this movie." I balked. "I have never said you're not allowed to go anywhere. I'm asking for basic communication." "Well, it doesn't feel basic when you say it like that," she said, lips twisting. "It feels like you're keeping score." We smoothed it over that night. I put 1 plate in the fridge. She promised to try to give more notice. I promised to try not to sound so accusing, but something small and sharp lodged in my chest after that conversation, the idea that expressing any discomfort about her going out might be interpreted as control. Then came Daniel. He was a new addition to her stories about work, the way people enter your life as names first. Dan from sales is hilarious. Dan said the client's logo looks like clip art. Me and Dan were stuck on this call for an hour, you should have heard. I knew in a detached way that Daniel was single, about our age, and in her words, one of those guys who talks to everyone like he's known them for 10 years. The first time I saw him was on her Instagram story. A boomerang from a bar, clinking glasses, neon lights, her caption, "Work fam." He was the one next to her, arms slung casually along the back of her chair, their heads tilted together in that leaning-in way you do when the music's too loud. Something uncomfortable twisted in my stomach. I told myself it was just insecurity, old ghosts from my last relationship, where my ex had sworn her best friend was just that until I found out they'd been sleeping together for months. I didn't want to project that onto Mia. She was not my ex. She had been so patient with my anxiety. I owed her trust. Still, patterns are patterns. The first real fight about Daniel happened about 6 months ago. Mia came home on a Friday smelling like cigarette smoke and whiskey, laughing at something still in her head. I was on the couch, laptop open, working on a bug that had been driving me nuts all day. "You're home late," I said, glancing at the clock. It was nearly 1 a.m. "Lost track of time," she said, kicking off her heels. She missed the shoe rack by a solid meter. "How's my favorite nerd?" "Tired," I said. "We were supposed to go to my sister's thing tomorrow morning, remember?" "Oh shit," her smile faltered. "Right, guess I'll need extra coffee." "Who were you out with?" I tried to keep my voice casual. "Work people," she said, heading for the bathroom. Friday drinks turned into actual drinks, you know how it is. I hesitated. Was Daniel there? She stopped in the doorway, fingers on the light switch. "Yeah," she said slowly. "Why, I saw your stories earlier," I said. "You two looked close." Her eyes narrowed. Are you seriously going to start policing how I sit next to my coworkers in a bar? I'm not policing, I said, frustration bubbling. I'm telling you how it looked, and how it feels hearing about him constantly, then seeing you two practically glued together. It makes me uncomfortable. Uncomfortable how? She shot back. Do you think I'm cheating? Is that what you're implying? I swallowed, heart pounding. I'm not saying you're cheating. I'm saying my brain goes there, yeah, because of my history. And because emotional lines blur when you're drunk and always out with the same person who gets you so well, or whatever. She laughed, but it wasn't nice. Oh my God, you sound just like my dad, she said. Every time my mum had a male friend, he'd accuse her of sleeping with him. It's toxic, Luke. I thought you were different. That comparison strung more than I expected. I'd met her father. The man was a walking red flag, jealous, controlling, tracking her mum's location when they were together, making snide comments about what she wore. I had seen Mia cry after a call with him where he'd called her ungrateful for moving out. The idea that she was putting me in the same category made my chest feel tight. I'm not your dad, I said quietly. Then don't act like him, she snapped. I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to enjoy my life without being interrogated when I get home. I asked who you were with, I said. That's literally it. She shook her head, hitting the bathroom light so hard it flickered. It's the tone, Luke, it's the suspicion. Was Daniel there? You two looked close. That's not neutral. We went to bed that night with our backs to each other, the space between us colder than the AC. The thing is, I listened to her. I had spent so much of my life terrified of becoming the controlling boyfriend stereotype that hearing those words out loud from someone I loved hit me like a truck, so I backed off. I didn't ask as many questions about where she was going or who she was with. I told myself, this is me trusting her. And for a while, things were quieter, on the surface anyway. She started going out more though, spontaneous after-work drinks. Just one more round, then we're leaving, I swear. Sometimes she'd send me a selfie from the bar, a blurry shot of her and a cluster of people, neon lights, tongues out, peace signs. Look at me having fun, see, nothing to worry about. But those photos never showed who took them. I tried to focus on my own stuff. I started doing more things without her, game nights with my friends, an indoor soccer team, extra hours at work. I told myself that giving her space meant we'd actually appreciate the time we did spend together more. Instead, it felt like we were living parallel lives that only occasionally intersected in the same bed. The first time something truly concrete happened was about 2 months ago. Mia came home from a work thing on a Wednesday with her lipstick smudged and her hair messier than usual. She tossed her jacket on the chair, went straight to the bathroom, and I heard the shower start. No hey, no nothing. I sat at the table, staring at the jacket, at the phone sticking out halfway from the pocket. I didn't go through her phone. I've always been weird about privacy because my ex used to snoop through my stuff. It was a line I swore I'd never cross. But the screen lit up and I couldn't help glancing. A preview flashed up. Daniel had a really good time tonight. Wish we could have stayed longer. My chest constricted. My palms got sweaty. That stupid inner chihuahua started yapping. I did not pick up the phone. I did not open the message. But something in me, some fragile little bridge of trust I'd been tiptoeing across, shuddered. When she came out, damp hair twisted in a towel, I asked how her night was. Fine, she said, grabbing pajamas from the drawer. Boring actually. Everyone left early. Everyone left early. I opened my mouth, then closed it. If I said anything, she'd accuse me of snooping, of reading into things, of controlling. So I swallowed it. The urge to confront her sat like a stone in my throat. It took another few weeks for that stone to grow too big to ignore. We were in the kitchen on a Saturday afternoon, sunlight pouring through the window, warmth and normalcy everywhere except inside my skull. Mia's phone was on the bench, face up, as she scrolled through something and told me about a new event she was planning. Her friend Ellie called. Mia picked up, laughing. I wasn't trying to listen in, but our apartment isn't big. I couldn't not hear. Girl, last night was wild, Ellie said, loud enough that I could hear each syllable. You and Dan were attached at the hip. Mia turned slightly away, dropping her voice. SHH, he's here, she hissed. Then louder, forced bright. Anyway, yeah, work has been crazy. The room went cold. After the call, she turned back to me, smile laminated on. Sorry, Ellie, in one of her dramatic moods. Did you go out last night? I asked carefully. She blinked. Yeah, I told you. You said you were grabbing one drink with Sarah after work, I said. You came home at 3. She faltered, then recovered. It turned into more than one. We joined up with some more people. It was fine. Emily said you and Dan were attached at the hip, I said. My voice was shaking now, anger and fear stirring together. Why would she need to be quiet about that if it's so innocent? Her eyes flashed. Were you listening to my call? Our kitchen is not exactly a soundproof booth, Mia, I said. You told her to be quiet because I was here, so clearly there's something you don't want me hearing. She slammed the cupboard door. You are being insane right now, she snapped. You're twisting everything. This is exactly why I didn't tell you last night got bigger than planned. I knew you'd do this, make a whole thing about me daring to have fun. Fun is not the issue, I said louder now. It's the lying, the half-truths, the secrecy. You say I'm controlling because I ask questions, but you keep giving me reasons to ask. Her face hardened like cooling wax. I can't breathe with you, she said quietly but with precision. Every move I make, you're there, analyzing it, demanding explanations. It makes me feel like a teenager in trouble with her dad. There it was again, the dad comparison. She knew how much it hit me, and she used it like a scalpel. I started therapy a week later. She'd thrown "you need help" at me in the middle of that fight, and honestly, she wasn't wrong about that part. My anxiety had been spiking anyway. I was waking up at 3 a.m., convinced she was gone, checking her side of the bed. I needed someone impartial to tell me if I was, in fact, turning into this controlling monster she saw. My therapist, a middle-aged guy named Aaron with kind eyes and ugly shoes, listened while I spewed out the whole story in one breath. And am I asked at the end, braced for impact, controlling? He tilted his head thinking. You clearly have trust issues from your past, he said, and you're anxious. That combination can absolutely come across as demanding or suffocating if you're constantly asking for reassurance. But I'm also hearing that you're asking for basic transparency in response to some objectively shady behavior. So which is it? Both things can be true, he said. You could probably benefit from learning how to tolerate uncertainty without catastrophizing, but your partner could also be using words like controlling to shut down valid concerns. One doesn't cancel the other out. That landed with a weird mix of relief and dread. If I couldn't cling to the idea that I was the sole problem, then I had to look at the ways she was twisting things too. Which brings us back to tonight. She said she was going out after work for a quick drink to celebrate the end of a project. I'd tried to play it cool. Have fun, I'd texted, adding a smiley face I didn't feel. By 9 she wasn't home. Fine, by 10:30 no update. The pit in my stomach grew teeth. I thought about texting, deleted 3 drafts, tried to distract myself with a game. Failed. At 11 I caved and sent. Me, everything okay? No response. At 11:15 I checked her location, not because she'd given it to me, but because we'd shared it ages ago for safety and never turned it off. She forgot it existed most of the time. I almost did too until nights like this. Her little dot was across town, in an area full of bars and late-night restaurants. I watched it sit there motionless for 15 minutes. My chest hurt. It wasn't the location, it was the silence, the complete disregard for the fact that someone at home might be worried. At 11:30, keys turned in the lock. She stepped in, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, that particular mix of alcohol and adrenaline. Hey, she said, unbothered. You ignored my text, I said. The words tumbled out before I could temper them. I've been sitting here wondering if you were okay. She rolled her eyes, toeing off her boots. Luke, I was out, I didn't see it. It says raid, I said, holding up my phone. It did, that little red at 11:12 p.m. mocking me. She glanced at it, then shrugged. Okay, so I saw it and forgot to reply. I was in the middle of something. With him, I asked. Her eyes sharpened. There it is, she said. I was wondering how long it would take you to bring Daniel into this. Was I wrong? I pressed. Is that who you were with? She hesitated just long enough. Among other people, she said finally. Why does it matter? It matters because you keep lying by omission, I said, standing up. My hands were shaking. If you had nothing to hide, you'd just say, yeah, I was out with Daniel and some others. We had too many drinks. Sorry for making you worry. Instead, you go vague, you get defensive. You tell your friends to shut up when they mention him around me. What am I meant to think? She smirked then, that little twist of her mouth that used to say, you're being ridiculous, in a teasing way but now just looked mean. You're meant to think, my girlfriend is an adult who can handle herself without being monitored like a teenager, she said. I am not monitoring you, I said, heat rising up my neck. I'm reacting to you disappearing all the time with a guy you've admitted has a thing for you. We're just friends, she snapped. Friends don't send wish we could have stayed longer texts, I shot back. Her cheeks went pink. You looked at my phone. I saw the notification, I said. If you're going to leave your phone face up on the table, that's not snooping, that's existing in the same room. She grabbed her jacket from the chair, movements sharp. You know what, I'm not doing this with you right now. I had a good night, and I'm not going to let you ruin it because your anxiety is screaming in your ear. My anxiety is screaming because my girlfriend is acting like she's single, I said, voice cracking. Because every time I try to talk about it, you tell me I'm controlling instead of actually reassuring me. She pulled her phone from her pocket, screen lighting up with a new message. I saw his name. I saw the time. My vision tunneled. Where are you going? I asked as she headed for the door. Out, she said, that smirk snapping back into place. Daniel's still out with some people. I told them I might rejoin. It's nearly midnight, I said, incredulous. You just got home, we're in the middle of a fight, and you're going to go back out to see him. She tilted her head, eyes glinting. If you're going to act like this when I come home, why would I stay? She said. You're suffocating me, Luke. This, she gestured between us, this constant suspicion. It's not healthy. I'm allowed to leave when I feel like I'm being attacked. You're allowed to do whatever you want, I said, words coming out flat now, the initial panic giving way to something colder. You've made that very clear. She rolled her eyes, already turning the knob, and then she smirked, tossed the line over her shoulder like it was nothing. Stop controlling me. Like I was the one dragging us toward this cliff, not her. Like calling me controlling was her golden ticket out of any accountability. Then she pulled the door open and stepped into the hallway. I heard the distant ding of the elevator, the echo of her boots on concrete, and then nothing. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, hand on the frame, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my teeth. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run after her, to beg, to plead, to somehow fix whatever she thought was wrong with me so she'd come back. Instead, I closed the door, slowly, deliberately locked it. Maple wound herself around my ankles, confused. I scooped her up and sat on the couch, clutching her a little too tightly as she squirmed. I'm not crazy, I whispered into her fur, as if my cat could validate my reality. I'm not controlling. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my phone to buzz once with a notification from our bank app, contactless payment at some bar across town. Long enough to imagine her at a table with him, leaning in, laughing, maybe complaining about her controlling boyfriend back home. I opened my messages to Mia and started typing. If you're going to be with him, just say so. I stared at it, deleted, typed again. We are done if you walk back in here at 3 am and expect me to pretend this is normal. Deleted. What I ended up sending was, I'm not okay with this, we need to talk when you're back. Seen no reply. The talking never really happened, not in any real way. She came home at almost 4 a.m, the sky starting to lighten around the edges. I was in bed, very much not asleep, staring at the ceiling. She slipped off her boots in the dark, tiptoed like a teenager trying not to wake her parents. I'm awake, I said. She froze. Okay, she whispered. Did you see my text? A pause, yeah. And I don't want to do this at 4 a.m, she said, climbing into bed beside me, the smell of someone else's cologne clinging to her jacket. We'll talk tomorrow when you're less wound up. Tomorrow became later became, I can't have this conversation right now, and suddenly we were in a loop. Every time I tried to bring it up, she'd say I was starting a fight, ruining the vibe, punishing her for having a life. I went back to therapy, told Aaron everything, that she'd called me controlling again, that she'd left to see him mid-argument, that I felt crazy for thinking that was as bad as it felt. Luke, he said slowly, if you were describing this dynamic about a friend, what would you say? That her boyfriend is a jealous asshole, I joked weakly. He didn't laugh, be honest, he said. I exhaled, that she's checking out of the relationship and using controlling as a shield, I said, that she wants the freedom of being single without the responsibility of being honest about it. And what do you want? He asked. I thought about it, really thought. I want a relationship where I don't feel like I'm begging for scraps of respect, I said, my voice cracked on the last word. Where asking, where are you, doesn't get me compared to an abusive father, where my anxiety is something we work around, not something she throws in my face when she doesn't want to look at her own behavior. So what are you going to do? The question sat with me for a week. During that week, Mia came and went like a tide. Some nights she was home, curled up next to me, affectionate and present, almost like the old days. Other nights she was out, vague and unreachable, coming back with that same bright, brittle energy. The last straw, weirdly, wasn't dramatic. No new affair revelation, no caught in the act. It was a Tuesday morning, her heading out the door for work, me sitting at the table with my coffee. She kissed the top of my head like you pat a dog and said, "Don't wait up tonight. We're probably doing karaoke after team drinks." "Is he going?" I asked. I didn't even say his name. She sighed, already halfway out. "Yes, he is going," she said. "Everyone's going. Are you going to be okay with that, or do I need to give you a detailed report beforehand like some kind of parole officer?" Something inside me just unclicked, like a switch being flipped. "No," I said slowly. "I'm not going to need a report." I set my mug down carefully, because I think we're done, Mia. She froze in the doorway, hand on the frame. "What?" "I think we're done," I repeated, heart pounding but weirdly steady. "I can't do this anymore. The gaslighting, the half-truths, being made to feel like I'm crazy for wanting basic honesty. You clearly want a different kind of life right now. One where you can stay out till 4 with some guy from work and not have to think about how that affects anyone at home. That's fine. You're allowed to want that, but I'm allowed to not sign up for it." Her eyes filled with tears instantly, which honestly I hadn't expected. "You're breaking up with me because I have friends," she whispered. "I'm breaking up with you because you've been halfway out the door for months," I said, "and because every time I try to talk about it, you turn it into a referendum on my personality instead of on your choices." She shook her head, tears spilling over. "Wow," she said, "everything really is about you, huh? You never once asked why I needed those nights out, why I felt so trapped here." "That's not true," I said. "I've asked you so many times how you're feeling. You either say, fine, or you say I'm making you feel guilty for having fun. I'm done chasing you down emotionally while you run toward someone else." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. I barely recognized myself, this version who was actually holding a boundary instead of collapsing into apologies. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just ending it after everything?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Unless you're willing to be brutally honest about what's been going on with Daniel, and about what you actually want from this relationship, yeah," I said. "Because right now, you're asking me to accept a reality where my girlfriend disappears into the night with another guy, lies about it, and then calls me controlling when I say it hurts. I can't live in that reality." She stared at the floor for a long time, tears dripping onto the hardwood. When she finally looked up, her face was hard in a way I'd only seen a few times. "Fine," she said, "you want brutal honesty. Yes, I like him. More than I should. Things have happened. We haven't had sex, but we've crossed lines, okay? I like the way he makes me feel. Light, fun, not like I'm walking on eggshells around your anxiety. Happy now." The words punched the air out of me. Some petty part of my brain noted the "we haven't had sex" line with a bitter, "sure, and I'm the Pope." But mostly I felt this hollow, echoing ache. The thing I'd been afraid of was real. "Thank you for finally saying it," I said quietly. We talked for another hour after that, well, argued, cried, barked at each other in circles. In the end, though, it boiled down to this. She didn't want to stop seeing him, she didn't want to go to therapy, and she didn't want to be with someone who made her feel watched. I didn't want to be with someone who thought my asking, "Are you okay?" was the same as installing CCTV. So we ended it, with a couple of hours of messy words after 3 years of history. That was 3 weeks ago. She moved out fast, staying with a friend for now, though I'd bet money she's at his place most nights. The apartment feels too quiet, and somehow too small and too big at the same time. I keep expecting to hear her keys in the door at random hours. Maple still jumps up when someone walks past in the hall. I go back and forth between missing her so much I feel physically sick, and being so angry I have to go for a run just to burn it off. I miss the good parts, the way she'd hum while making coffee, the way she'd squeeze my shoulder when she walked past my desk, the way she'd make up elaborate backstories for strangers in cafes. But then I remember her smirk in the doorway, saying, "Stop controlling me," like it was a punchline, right before choosing another man over even trying to make me feel safe. I don't think I was perfect in this. I know my anxiety made things harder. I know I did sometimes come at her with a tone that probably felt more accusatory than I intended. I know I could have done a better job at separating my past from our present. But I also know this: asking, "Can you let me know when you're going to be out till 4 am?" is not abuse. Saying, "It hurts me when you hide who you're going out with" is not control. Expecting your partner not to emotionally cheat with their coworker is not unreasonable. Mia may go around telling people her ex-boyfriend was controlling, that he couldn't handle her having male friends, that he made everything about his anxiety. Maybe that's the story she needs to tell to live with her own choices. My story is a little different. It's about a guy who tried so hard not to be controlling that he let his own boundaries dissolve, who bent over backwards to trust someone who kept turning his legitimate fears into a character flaw instead of a conversation starter. I don't know what I'm asking from this sub. Validation, perspective, maybe just a place to put this so it's not rattling around in my head alone. All I know is that next time I'm with someone, and I hope there is a next time, if she ever tells me I'm controlling for asking for basic respect, I'm going to remember Mia's smirk in that doorway, the feel of my heart pounding in my ears as she walked out into the night to see another man, and I'm going to ask myself a different question. Am I actually controlling, or am I just the only one in the room who still cares about the difference between freedom and betrayal?